last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. In California, a state audit finds several cracks in the child protective system, including more than 1,000 state-licensed care facilities with at least 600 foster homes, group homes, and daycares matching the addresses in the state's sex offender registry. And the CPS director of Fresno County admits that he doesn't think there's anything that any organization can do to guarantee that there will never be a child death or abuse situation. South Dakota is receiving millions in federal incentives under the state's mass confiscation of Native American children program by using state CPS agents to snatch an average of 700 Native American children a year, making it so that even though they only make up 15% of the state's child population, they make up more than half of the foster care system. In Alabama, immigrant families are afraid that due to tough new immigration laws, the government will deport parents and force them to leave their kids behind. And in South Carolina, a new report sheds light on the difficulties children being raised by gay parents face, including increased poverty and bullying, as gay families that are not recognized by the state are not afforded the same legal protections as everybody else. In Arizona this week, the Maricopa County attorney puts forth a proposal to have police investigators instead of CPS agents handle child abuse investigations. Oklahoma lawmakers are being accused of politicizing DHS problems, as the legislature leads the drive for DHS reform. DHS says that they're working on it, and the state even finds an extra $10 million to give to DHS, which will use the money to help the poor and defend itself against a class action lawsuit brought on by the child advocacy group Children's Rights. A doctor from Maine is up in arms, as the federal government announces it wants to test an anthrax vaccine on children to see if it will help protect them against a biological terror attack. Child advocates in West Texas are complaining about a shortage of CPS agents taking on more and more cases, and in Connecticut, a U.S. Congresswoman wants to boost the economy by offering free diapers to low-income families. In Nebraska, a new audit shows that child welfare costs have increased 27% since the state undertook its cost-saving privatization initiative. In Florida, authorities are warning parents about phony imposters going around impersonating CPS agents. An Orlando federal judge temporarily blocks the state from drug testing welfare applicants, and the Republicans are calling the judge's injunction insane and irresponsible. A Japanese woman is arrested in Hawaii after being accused of making off with a kid to Japan during a custody battle with her ex-husband during a messy divorce in Wisconsin. In Guatemala, a court sentences two women to 16 and 21 years in jail for trafficking a stolen baby for adoption to a U.S. family. In Nigeria, members of an environmental group who bought computer hardware at a Nigerian market says that they found confidential data from Wisconsin's Child Protective Services Agency on the hard drive. And in Haiti, police raid an orphanage for abusing and neglecting kids. In Australia this week, CPS agents in Victoria are ignoring abuse and closing cases in an effort to boost their numbers and shrink a backlog of unresolved cases. A group of mothers who were forced to give their babies up for adoption back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s are demanding an apology from the Australian government. And under a new law, the Director General of the Department of Child Protection can now apply to have any home in West Australia declared as an alcohol-free zone. In Canada, the Manitoba government is fighting a lawsuit brought on by a young man who was abused in a group home, claiming that his suffering is not their problem. The Canadian Boy Scouts are being accused of not reporting abuse allegations by Scout leaders to the proper authorities. A foster mother from Ottawa is charged with killing a 7-year-old in her care, and the Canadian government is being accused of failing Aboriginal children living on reservations in Ottawa. And children's rights advocates say that it's so bad that they're taking the case to the United Nations, claiming that shaming Ottawa before the whole world will lead to concrete improvements for Aboriginal children. In England this week, a 23-year-old woman cons an infertile couple out of their £2,000 savings when she pretended to be a surrogate mother. A British watchdog group claims that doctors and nurses haven't learned their lessons from the Baby P case and are still failing to recognize signs of abuse in children. Nigerian authorities are investigating why British police snatched 6 kids from a Nigerian family based on allegations that the mother was a sex worker. A group of people who claim to be victims of mental and physical abuse at the Haute de la Grande Children's Home in Jersey are planning to sue the state's High Court in London. An alliance of lawyers is calling for the government to review the axing of legal aid to the poor in family law cases, saying that it costs more and leads to poor outcomes for families. And a British cop who ignored dozens of 999 calls, including reports of rape and child abuse, gets fired for treating them as non-emergencies. In entertainment news this week, Dog the Bounty Hunter wins custody of his grandson after an audio tape emerges of the father abusing the kid. Dog says that he was shocked and heartbroken over his grandson's alleged abuse, and that he wanted to strangle his grandson's father. In Maryland this week, a foster parent gets busted for sexually abusing foster kids. In Connecticut, the father of a man who is facing the death penalty for killing a woman and her two daughters testifies that he didn't get psychological help for his son after he was sexually molested by a foster teen who they had taken into their home. And a Connecticut social worker at a private school for special needs kids admits to a sexual relationship with a 16-year-old boy, and that she was pregnant with her husband's child when their relationship began. In New York, two parents plead guilty to a failed rescue attempt in regards to their 8 children who they say were being abused in foster care. A man from New York testifies that his sister was the one who severely beat an 8-year-old foster child, and the prosecutors were trying to pin it on him. A Florida judge holds secret meetings with CPS agents to find out who leaked information to the newspaper in the Nubia-Barahona case. In Ohio, the state will conduct criminal investigations into Trumbull County's Children's Services after 2-year-old DeMarcus Jackson was stomped to death by his biological father less than a week after being returned from foster care. And a Kentucky CPS agent admits to falsifying records. In Ohio, a grandmother who is fighting for custody is complaining that her grandson has been in 4 different foster homes in the last 14 months. In California, a video prompts an abuse investigation at a youth boot camp for making a boy wear a tire around his neck and forcing kids to drink water until they vomited. In Oregon, a jury awards a former foster child $2 million after being starved and abused for 2 years while under the watch of state CPS agents. Oklahoma will pay a $1.1 million settlement to a young man who was sexually molested in foster care. In Pennsylvania, an accomplice in the Luzerne County Cash for Kids scandal, where many teens were locked up in for-profit detention facilities for minor crimes in exchange for kickbacks to the judges, wants part of her pension returned. And a grandmother from Texas is pissed that a child advocacy group is using her dead granddaughter in an effort to get CPS to snatch more children. A father from Florida is fighting to get custody of his 2-year-old son who was abused by the mother and her new husband, and he didn't even find out about the abuse until he saw it in the news headlines last week. In Iowa, a mother is taking issue with an abuse determination by CPS agents after the doctor says that the child's injuries are likely accidental. In New Jersey, a judge decides that the parents of little Adolf Hitler and Aryan Nation Campbell should not have custody of the kids, despite also ruling that they were never abused or neglected. And finally, tonight in New York, a cop who was taking part in a failed drug raid slaps a 7-pound dog so hard that he flew out a 3rd-story window, all for protecting the kids in the home by jumping up on a bed and barking. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Vampire Baby LK, over and out.